Hey guys, it's been a while, hasn't it? A long while. But I soon plan on changing that. I, the great game maker Jay, have devised the ultimate strategy for uploading on time on a consistent basis, with maybe a few exceptions if my schedule really needs it. This drumroll has been going on for way too long. Yeah, I'm just gonna try to upload a video every other month. It's not that complicated. Anywho, let's get to the real part of the video. Almost all games have characters. Some big, some are small, and some change size. But how do you make one? Well, in today's video, I'm going to try and show you my process for making a good character for a video game by creating a whole new character for my game. So, let's get started. To start off, you need inspiration, an idea to work from, a guideline. You can get this from anything, a movie you recently watched, a Rice Krispie wrapper, that one moldy piece of sushi from 3 weeks ago but is still in your fridge for some reason. Anything. For the sake of this video, I sent out a Discord poll in my Discord server, which has a link in the description that you should totally click. Anyway, now I just have to wait and see what people say. Looking at the poll later, the people have chosen a frog in a cult. Alright, I guess I can do it. After you've gotten your base inspiration though, start finding reference images. So for a frog in a cult, I'll find frog images. Now, since people chose it to be in a cult, I'll just be drawing a regular frog, because the cult part can't really be shown. That'll be added when we actually implement the frog into the game. Now that I have my inspiration though, I have to get on to step 2. Step 2 for some people is the easiest, and for some the hardest. This is drawing the character. No matter whether you find this easy or hard though, it is one of the most important steps, because how the player sees the character will impact their feelings about it later on. To draw the character, I will be using LibreSprite, which is a kind of open source version of Sprite, but you can use whatever program you prefer. In terms of actually drawing the character though, I prefer to start off by making the outline and then adding in details. Now, I'm not the best at animation, but if you want more info on how to animate stuff, there are tons of videos dedicated to teaching it. Anyway, once you've drawn the character, it's time to actually put the frog into the game. Putting the frog into the game is probably one of the hardest steps to write down, because if you didn't know, for most videos, I type the script before actually recording any video at all. So for this section, I'm going to be doing something different. I'm going to record myself implementing all of the frog into the game, and then I'm going to speed it up and voice over it and explain everything that I'm doing. Ready? Here we go. So, we start off strong by getting a new scene and adding the art. Editor's note, because of my OBS settings, you can't see the pop-out windows where I choose what nodes and frames to use. Once we get the frames in, I start off by configuring the animation settings. Once I do that, I get it set up in the main scene. I also have to resize it because I originally drew the sprite too small. When I make new characters, I also use older characters that I've already made so that I have a reference. If this is your first character though, at the end of the video, I'll simplify all of the stuff that I do into easy steps for you to follow. Now, after setting up my base sprite and animations, I add in the collision shape. Now, this is not the collision shape that detects walls and other things. This is the collision shape to tell whether the player is in range, where they can talk to the frog. Next, I set up the script for the sprite and add a timer. The timer will start when the player enters the hitbox, and if the player doesn't speak before the timer runs out, the frog will continue its jumping cycle. It's important to know that this character has a special script because of how it jumps. I also add in a little arrow over the sprite so that the player knows when they can speak to the frog. Here I also add in a new timer so that there's a break in between the frog's jumps. Now I go back to the script to set up the arrow's starting position. It's important to note that I don't develop my game linearly. I work on many parts at a time. I'll work on collision shapes, and then in the middle of doing that work, I'll work on something else. When I do the full steps on how to make a character for a game at the end of the video, I'll make the list more linear for you to follow. You should also note that most of the things that I'm doing right now will be scrapped because of how the animation works with the sprite. But right now, I start trying to work out which frames the player can talk to the frog on before it jumps. Now I also start adding in all of the nonsense that has to happen for the player to be able to actually talk to the frog. I add in the timer, start function, and I also make sure that the arrow is visible for the player to see. After setting up some more base logic, we get to the first test, and it doesn't work. This is just what I mentioned. Because the animation is the whole frog jumping from side to side, the frog node never moves, meaning that the collision shape never moves either. Now, I'll start trying a ton of solutions that won't work, so let's skip ahead to the final working solution. I ended up using 2 different collision shapes on each side of the jump. Now, after adding in a bit more logic, it's time for the next test. And it doesn't work. Now, after a bit more debugging, I found out it's a simple issue. I just mixed up the timer names. Now for the real test. It kinda works. Again, after a bit more debugging, I found out that I mixed up left and right. So, after fixing up that, it works. However, because I can't do anything the easier way, I dump in a whole load of spaghetti code, because making efficient code is for losers. And look, it works! Except for that one frame where the sprite switches directions. We don't talk about that. Now, after I do a bit more debugging, it doesn't switch directions weirdly, so it's time to test the frog in the real game. And yeah, there are a few more bugs, so after going through my code again, I realized that there's no code if I leave the hitbox, which would be an issue because I don't want the frog to get frozen if I leave and don't come back. So, after I fix that up, nope, still buggy. More debugging later, and it finally works, and we can move on to the next step. Now, the next step is a really fun step, because you can give the character its personality. So, to start doing this, I add in a little logic about how it can't jump away from the player if it's talking to them, and then I start writing dialogue. So, for this character, I try to make him a little sketchy, but very kind, like most people that invite you to a cult. Now, I don't want to give it all away, so I won't tell you everything that I have planned for him. And a frog in a cult is not a character that I think everybody needs to know how to make, so let me just tell you base guides for making your script good. Make it a little mysterious or interesting in some way. The player should want to know more and want to interact with your character. Also, give the player a good personality. They don't have to be funny or happy all the time, but make them interesting. And finally, don't be afraid to write a bad script. It's okay. If someone doesn't like it, say that it was intentional to make it bad, and you wanted it to be that way. So, I'm not going to show you the actual cult scene and stuff. Get it? Cult scene instead of cut scene. Anyway, I'm not going to show the cut scene with the cult and stuff, but here's the final working frog. Also, I did promise the full checklist on how to make a character, so here it is. 1. Start with the art and get some nice references, take your time on it, and if there's also a building or other place for the character to go, make that too. 2. Make the base of the character work in-game. Start by implementing the art, then the hitboxes, and then the logic for the character movement. 3. Add personality and depth to the character. Write a script that makes the player interested in this character. And 4. Add any other cutscenes or other tidbits to the character to liven it up. And that's it. Those steps should help you make a cool, interesting character for your game. Thanks for watching. Hey, welcome to the end of the video. Yes, I'm doing an outro and stuff, but I don't have any Patreon names to roll, so instead, please enjoy this loop of Trevor dancing. Here, I'll make you all a deal. If I get 200 subscribers, I'll fully put this loop of Trevor dancing into the game. Thanks for watching.